They gave me the ultimatum over white flowers and wedding plans. Kneel and beg for forgiveness, or you are banned. I refused to kneel. Instead, I booked a flight to Bora Bora. They think I live off their money. That is the funniest part. Every single one of their bills is in my name. My name is Avery Rivera. I am 33 years old. I work as a senior analyst at Ironbridge Capital Advisors, and from my home office on the 42nd floor, I can see the Chicago River carve a black, reflective scar through the heart of the city. My job is to analyze complex data streams, to find the rot in a balance sheet, to identify the precise point where liability overshadows assets. I am very good at my job. Tonight, the liability was calling me on speakerphone. The call chimed through my apartment's integrated system just after 10 p.m. The rain wasn't merely falling, it was an assault, a horizontal barrage of Lake Michigan's fury against the floor-to-ceiling glass. The screen glowed with the incoming group call Evelyn, my mother, Lena, my sister. I let it ring twice, a small, ingrained ritual of bracing myself. I tapped the speaker icon. The air in my sterile, quiet apartment was instantly polluted. "Avery," Evelyn began. Her voice wasn't warm. It was curated. It was the voice she used right before the curtain raised on one of her dramas, a prelude to a demand. "We are calling, all of us, because we are very, very disappointed in you." I heard the faint, distinct clink of crystal flute against crystal flute. Champagne. It sounded staged. A piece of audio evidence meant to remind me of the celebration I was currently excluded from. "Hi, Avery." That voice was Derek Lang, Lena's fiancé. He sounded winded, uncomfortable. Derek is, or was, a decent man. The kind of man who builds a small, earnest tech startup and believes in things like synergy and family. He was a lamb in a lion's den, and he didn't even know it. His laugh was a short, sharp bark of pure awkwardness. "Evelyn, Lena, maybe this isn't the best time. It's late." "It is the perfect time, Derek," Lena snapped, her voice cutting through the speaker, sharp and clear. "She needs to hear this. Mom and I have discussed it, and Derek agrees." Derek made a small noise of protest that was quickly suffocated. "If you want to be at my wedding," Lena announced, and I could picture her, chin high, hand on her hip, performing for her tiny audience. The theatrical pause hung heavy in my silent apartment. "You will apologize." Apologize? The word just sat there, naked and absurd. The demand was so toweringly disproportionate to the crime that I almost laughed. The crime had taken place the night before, at a rare family dinner at Gibson's. It was a dinner I had, naturally, paid for, though the reservation had been triumphantly made in their name. Lena had spent an hour modeling her new, blindingly large engagement ring. A 2-carat weight she flashed like a weapon while detailing the extravagant plans for the Astoria Grand Ballroom. She spoke of custom-flown orchids, a 10-tier cake, and a string quartet. "Derek is just so generous," she had sighed, batting her eyelashes at him, her hand draped languidly on his forearm. "Isn't it wonderful, Avery, to finally have someone take care of you?" I had been silent, sipping my water, the numbers computing in my head. I knew Derek's salary range. I knew the debt load his startup was carrying. I knew what that ring really cost, and the truth, tired and bitter, had slipped out. It wasn't even meant with malice. It was just exhaustion. "Well," I'd said, keeping my voice light, "you've always been exceptionally good at finding someone to cover the bill. Lena." The silence that fell on the table was instant and profound. Derek choked on his wine. Evelyn's face tightened into that familiar mask of maternal outrage, her features hardening like quick-set cement. Lena's eyes, predictably, filled with the tears she could summon on command. The scene was set. I was, as always, the villain. Now, on the phone, the performance continued. "Apologize for what, exactly?" I asked. I swiveled in my ergonomic chair, turning away from my work monitors to face the storm. The city lights below were blurred by the rain, a watercolor of someone else's life. "For embarrassing me!" Lena shrieked. The victimhood turned up to full volume. "For humiliating Derek in front of everyone. For suggesting that I'm some kind of gold digger." "She didn't use that word, honey," Derek muttered, a weak attempt at peacekeeping. "It's what she meant," Lena cried. "She always does this. She can't stand to see me happy." And then Lena delivered the line. The one that finally, after 33 years, severed the last corroded thread of my misplaced loyalty. "You're just jealous," she hissed, her voice dripping with the faux pity she specialized in. "You're jealous that I have this, that I have a life, and all you have is your sad little job. You couldn't survive for 1 week without Mom and Dad's money." The silence that followed her statement was heavy, but the irony was heavier. I looked at the monitor on my left. It was not my work screen. It was my personal finance dashboard, a complex web of accounts, auto payments, and projections. It was glowing in the dark room. It showed the mortgage on their family home in Lincoln Park, the one they boasted about as their nest egg. The mortgage was in my name. The home equity line of credit they'd taken out against it 6 months ago, I was the one making the interest-only payments to keep the bank from sniffing around. It showed the utilities. The electricity that was currently illuminating their home. The high-speed internet Lena was using to plan her orchid-filled wedding. All of it, every single utility, was auto-paid from my primary checking account. It showed the emergency medical bills from 2 months ago, Evelyn's elective cosmetic procedure, framed to me as a terrifying health crisis. It showed the activity on the platinum credit card in Lena's wallet, the card she believed was a generous gift from our father. It was a supplementary card on my own account. I saw every $5 latte, every $1,000 boutique dress, every essential spa day. Our money, Lena had said. The audacity of it was almost beautiful. I wasn't just an analyst. I was their primary financial analyst, their shadow bank, their secret benefactor. I was their money, my phone, sitting on the desk, lit up, a text message from Lena, a pincer movement to complement the verbal assault. Lena, just say you're sorry so we can move on. Lena, stop being so difficult. Lena, grow up. Avery, don't ruin my wedding. Ruin it, as if the truth were an act of sabotage. I leaned my head back against the cool mesh of my chair. The ergonomic support suddenly felt like a cage. I closed my eyes, and the flashbacks came, not as soft memories, but as hard, itemized debits. The first transfer, 7 years ago. I was 26, fresh off my first major promotion. Dad. Charles had called, his voice quiet, almost ashamed. Just a temporary shortfall. Avery, the hospital bill for your mother. It's just a lot. I sent the money. I was proud to do it. Proud to be the capable one, the reliable daughter, the one who could fix things. I believed, naively, that it was a loan. I believed I would be paid back. I never was. Then came the temporary setup of the utilities in my name when they moved. Just while we sort out the new accounts. The just for now became forever. The family cell phone plan. Just so we can all talk easily. It wasn't convenience. It was a leash. I had let it happen. I had funded this entire illusion of their upper-middle-class stability. Why? Because it was easier than the confrontation. Because every "thank God for you, Avery, you're our rock" was a hit of dopamine, a counterfeit for affection. I had mistaken their dependence for love. I had let their habit of taking become my duty to provide. The rain lashed the window. A sudden, furious gust. It sounded like shattering glass. And just like that, the patience snapped. The old, damp paint of my compliance didn't just peel. It sloughed off my entire psyche in one wet, heavy sheet. My fingers moved, almost of their own volition. I kept the call on speaker. A fittingly toxic soundtrack to my own liberation. "Avery, are you even listening to me?" Evelyn demanded. "This silence is so childishly disrespectful." I was listening. I was also opening a new, clean browser tab. My fingers flew across the keyboard. OHARE, PPT. "We are waiting for your apology," Lena said, her voice smug. She thought she had won. The search results loaded. A flight, a connection through LAX. Total travel time. No, I filtered. A private charter leg from Los Angeles. Better, a flight leaving in 7 hours. First class, Bora Bora. The destination was arbitrary. It just needed to be far. It needed to be warm. It needed to be the absolute, cellular opposite of the cold. Gray. Demanding rain of Chicago. "I'm waiting," Lena sang, triumphant. My cursor hovered over the button. "Book now." The charge was a 5-figure sum that didn't make me blink. I clicked. The feeling that washed over me wasn't rebellion. It wasn't anger. It wasn't spite. It was physics. It was the restoration of balance. It was reclamation. I had just purchased my own oxygen mask, and I was finally going to put it on. "Avery, for God's sake, say something," Evelyn shouted. "I have to go," I said. My voice was perfectly calm. I hung up. The silence in the apartment was immediate and profound. The rain was just weather again, not an emotion. I stood up and walked to the built-in safe hidden behind a minimalist abstract print in my hallway. I typed in the 8-digit code. Inside, beneath my passport, and a stack of emergency cash, was a single, thick, navy blue binder. I pulled it out. It was heavy. I carried it back to my desk and laid it under the bright white light of my task lamp. The cover was blank, but in my head, it had a name, the Rivera Ledger. I opened it. This was not a scrapbook. This was an indictment. Page after page of receipts I had scanned, copies of wire transfers, annotated in my own small, neat script, printed out email chains. Email. "Avery darling, the club membership is up for renewal. Could you possibly..." Text screenshot. "Avery, the car broke down. The mechanic needs $4,000 by 5 p.m. It's an emergency." Wire confirmation. The $20,000 down payment on Derek's ring, funneled covertly through Lena's savings account, an account I funded monthly. Every bill, every bailout, every lie I had subsidized for 7 long years. My phone buzzed one last time on the desk, a final, desperate attempt from Lena. "Lena. Just apologize. It's such a small thing." I looked at the text message. I looked at the binder. 7 years thick with their demands. I looked at the glowing confirmation email for my flight to paradise. I smiled. It was not a nice smile, but it was a real one. The first one to reach my eyes in what felt like a decade. "No," I whispered to the empty room, to the flashing skyline, to the storm that was finally passing. "This is a 33-year thing." The cabin lights of the Boeing 777 faded to a deep, corporate blue, a mandated twilight. The engines settled into a steady, pressurized hum, the only sound that mattered, effectively erasing the memory of the lashing Chicago rain. We climbed, a smooth and powerful assertion of physics, banking steeply over the black mirror of Lake Michigan. I did not look down. I did not need to see the city receding. I had already seen its reflection in the polished darkness of my own window, a sprawling, intricate grid of amber and gold, shrinking second by second, until it was just a memory of a circuit board, a complex system of interconnected lights, and I, for the first time in my adult life, had unplugged myself from the grid. In the seat pocket, there was a small, leather-bound notebook, the kind airlines give you in first class that you are meant to find impressive. I took it, and the heavy, expensive-feeling pen beside it. I opened to the first clean, cream-colored page. The plane leveled off, a gentle sigh of hydraulics, as we set our course west. Under the focused beam of my personal reading light, I wrote 3 words. Reclaiming my time. The ink was black and definitive. It never starts with an ultimatum. It starts with a request. It starts with the insidious creep of love, twisted into obligation. The first time, the origin point of the debt I never signed up for, was 7 years ago. I was 26 years old. I had just closed my first seven-figure advisory deal at Ironbridge, a complex merger I had navigated almost entirely on my own. I was high on my own competence. I felt invincible. I was the rock star of the new analyst class. The call came on a Tuesday, not from Evelyn. Evelyn only calls to make announcements or to perform an emotion. The call was from my father. Charles, his voice, always quiet, was steeped in a static I would later come to recognize as shame. Aves, he'd said, the childhood nickname feeling heavy, a tool being used. Your mother, there was a scare, at the hospital. She's fine, she's absolutely fine, but the bills, the insurance is being difficult. You know how they are. I asked the question I should never have asked. How much? He hesitated. A perfectly calculated pause. It's a lot. We're in a temporary shortfall. Avery, just temporary. I wired the money before the workday was over. Nearly $20,000. I didn't just wire it. I did it with a hot, stupid surge of pride. I was the capable one. I was the fixer. I was the daughter who, unlike Lena, had her life together. I was the rock. I sent it with the implicit, naive belief of a 26-year-old that it was a loan. That family helped family, and that family paid family back. I never saw a dime. It was not a loan. It was an audition, and I had disastrously passed. After the hospital bill was covered, an emergency, I later learned was Evelyn's non-essential. Out-of-network cosmetic procedure, the requests became smaller, more insidious. They chipped away at the boundary between helping and hosting. When they moved into the Lincoln Park house, the one they boasted about at dinner parties, the one I now paid the mortgage on, the second thread was woven. Darling, the credit checks are such a hassle. Evelyn had sighed over the phone, her voice light and breezy, as if asking for a recipe. And my score is tied up in that old business account with your father. Could we just put the electricity and the internet in your name, just temporarily, just to get us settled? Temporarily. It is the most elastic and dangerous word in the English language. It stretched from a week to a month, and then, without any fanfare, it snapped shut into forever. The water bill followed, then the gas, then the premium cable and streaming package, the one with every sports channel for Charles and every movie channel for Lena, because, as Lena explained, she needed an escape from the stress of the world. Then came the final link in the chain, the family phone plan. Avery, it's just so much easier if we're all on one plan, Evelyn had announced, this time via a group text. It's so much cheaper that way. It's just for convenience. I remember staring at that text message, the screen bright in my dark office. Convenient for whom I was now paying for the very airwaves they used to call me and demand more. My family operates like a dysfunctional ecosystem, a perfectly balanced habitat where each member occupies a toxic niche. Evelyn, my mother, is the director. She craves an audience. She needs a stage. Her emotions are grand, operatic, and entirely public. She doesn't feel sadness. She performs grief. She doesn't feel pride. She hosts a victory parade. Her entire life is a production, and she is its perpetually wronged star. Charles, my father, is the silent partner. His complicity is his primary function. He enables Evelyn's theater and Lena's dependencies by retreating into a profound, suffocating absence. He sees the strings. He sees the lies. He sees the bank statements. But he would rather live in a compromised, subsidized peace than endure a single moment of difficult truth. And then, there is Lena. Lena is the storyteller. She is a master of the narrative. Her greatest talent is not, as I joked, finding someone to pay her bills. Her greatest talent is weaponizing pity. She learned very early that being the capable one, my role, was entirely too much work. It was far, far easier to be the vulnerable one. She weaves tales of hardship, of being misunderstood, of being too fragile for the world, and our parents, and now Derek Rush, to swaddle her in cotton wool and admiration, they had me perfectly trapped. They didn't use chains. They used praise. Avery is the rock of this family. Thank God for you. Avery, you're the only one with her head on straight. What would we ever do without our responsible one? That pride was inverted. It wasn't a compliment. It was a job description. It was a shackle painted gold. I wore it for 7 years, polishing it, admiring the way it shone in the light. All the while, it was slowly, steadily cutting off the circulation to my own life. But there is a darker, uglier truth. The one I have to admit to myself in the sterile quiet of this cabin, 30,000 feet above the sleeping heartland. I didn't just let it happen. I enabled it. I believed, on some deep, juvenile, heartbreaking level, that if I just carried one more burden, if I just solved one more crisis, if I just paid one more bill, I would finally be seen. I would finally be loved. I thought I could buy their respect. I thought I could purchase their validation. I thought that by making myself essential, I would, at last, be valued. It was a catastrophic miscalculation. They did not value me. They valued what I provided. The moment I threatened to stop providing, I was not seen. I was not loved. I was banned. I closed my eyes. The drone of the engines a steady mantra. I allowed myself a small, sharp fantasy. It would be morning soon in Chicago. I pictured Lena, energized by her righteous fury, heading to her favorite boutique on Oak Street for some pre-wedding stress relief. She would select an armful of clothes and hand over the platinum card, my platinum card. The sales associate would swipe it, and there would be that quiet, awful, definitive sound, declined. I pictured Evelyn, calling the caterer for the Astoria Grand to make a final adjustment, only to be told the deposit check drawn from the home equity line I was no longer paying had not cleared. I pictured the lights in the Lincoln Park house flickering, the internet cutting out mid-search for custom orchid centerpieces, the heat going cold, a jolt of power, so clean and cold it startled me, went through my chest. This was not revenge. I was simply teaching, a slow, steady, inevitable lesson in consequences, a lesson in physics for every action. There is a reaction. For every bill, there is a due date. A hot flash of guilt tried to rise up. It was an old reflex, the ingrained response trained into me since childhood. You are hurting them. You are breaking the family. You are the bad daughter. But this time, something was different. The guilt was shallow, a thin vapor. It hit the new, cold steel of my resolve and simply evaporated. The boundary wasn't trembling. For the first time in my 33 years, it was holding firm. I was not breaking the family. I was just refusing to be the only load-bearing wall holding up a condemned structure. Miss Rivera, a voice, gentle and real, cut through my thoughts. I opened my eyes. A flight attendant was leaning over me, her smile genuine, not performative. We'll be serving the breakfast course in about an hour, before we land in Los Angeles for your connection. Can I get you anything in the meantime? More champagne. I looked at the empty flute on the console, the one I had barely touched. No, thank you, I said. My voice sounded strange, calmer. Just water, and the breakfast. Please, that sounds lovely. She nodded. Of course. It was a tiny transaction, utterly normal, but it felt monumental. I was being served. I was accepting a kindness, a service I had paid for. Without calculating who else in my family needed a cut, I was receiving my own portion first. I turned back to my new notebook, the one with the 3 words. I turned the page. I started a new list. It was not a list of debts or obligations. The items were small, almost childishly simple. A morning swim, with no clock. Learn pottery. Make something imperfect and keep it. Real silence. The kind you don't have to pay for. The wishes were so tiny, so achievable, and yet they felt like a foreign language I was only just beginning to learn. The captain's voice came over the intercom, a smooth, professional baritone, announcing our initial descent into Los Angeles. I put the notebook away. I did not look at my phone. I knew, with absolute certainty, that it would be a raging inferno of missed calls and text messages vibrating with manufactured hysteria. I did not need to see them. I looked out the window. The sun was rising, painting the edge of the world in streaks of rose and fire. And below, as we cleared the gray marine layer, was the Pacific Ocean. It was a blue so deep, so vast, it hurt the eyes. A blue that held the light. A blue that did not need permission from anyone to exist. It just was. The connection from the small airport in Papeete was on a twin propeller plane, a puddle jumper that felt more like a bus with wings. Then, a boat, slicing through water so impossibly, vividly turquoise it looked like a special effect, a color that shouldn't exist in nature. The boat driver, a man with a smile carved into his sun-weathered face, pointed out my stop, a bungalow, one of a dozen, suspended on stilts over the lagoon. It looked less like a hotel and more like a promise. When he left, depositing my single, practical suitcase on the polished wooden floor. The first sound I heard was, nothing. No, not nothing. That was wrong. It was the absence of everything else. The absence of sirens, of traffic, of demanding voices, of the electronic hum of a dozen devices waiting for my attention. The first real sound was the gentle, rhythmic lapping of water beneath the floorboards. The second was the sigh of a humid, salty breeze moving the sheer white curtains, making them dance in the open doorway that led to a private deck. The air smelled of salt, tiara flowers, and damp, sun-warmed wood. I stood there for a full 5 minutes, just breathing. The silence was a physical presence, a balm. It was the first time in my life I had heard it, and then, a buzzing. My personal cell phone, the one I had left in my bag, was vibrating against the wooden table. The sound was a desecration. It was loud, angry, a digital hornet trapped in my paradise. I hadn't even turned it off. A rookie mistake. I looked at the screen, and the tension I thought I'd left in Chicago snapped right back into my shoulders. 19 missed calls, Evelyn. 32 text messages, Lena. 7 missed calls, Charles. 14 new text messages, Lena. It was a digital avalanche. As I watched, the screen lit up again. A group text. Evelyn Avery. Answer me right now. The power is off. The entire street has power. But we do not? What did you do? Lena. My card was declined. Lena. Do you hear me? Avery declined. Lena. At the boutique. In front of everyone, I have never been so humiliated in my entire life. Evelyn. This is not funny. The neighbors are looking. Charles is trying the breaker box, but it's not working. You handle the utility bills. Fix this. Fix this. Not, are you okay? Not, where are you? Not, why did you hang up? Fix this. I stared at the messages. The old, familiar acid of guilt and panic began to rise in my throat. My fingers twitched toward the phone icon. My muscles already moving to obey, to smooth things over, to make the problem go away. Instead, I took a breath, the salty one, the real one. I reached out and calmly, deliberately, turned the phone so it was face down on the table. The dark glass reflected the white curtains. Then I walked to the small kitchenette, found a glass, and filled it from the pitcher of cool water left for me. I drank it all. I poured a second glass. This water was for me. It was not for anyone else. I opened my suitcase. I did not take out a swimsuit. I took out the navy blue binder, the Rivera ledger, and my encrypted work laptop. I sat at the small wooden desk, facing the open expanse of the turquoise lagoon. The contrast was perfect, the serene, endless blue of my new reality, and the dark, tangled mess I was about to prune. I opened the laptop and tethered it to my other phone, my work device, the one they didn't have the number for. I had a job to do. My job, as it turned out, was not just financial analysis, it was liberation. I opened the Rivera ledger. The paper felt solid and real in my hands. The receipts, the printed emails, the annotations. For the first time, I didn't look at it with resentment. I looked at it as a project plan. I logged into my primary banking portal, the one that was the central nervous system for their entire subsidized life. I took out a pen and a fresh page from my notebook. I made columns: utilities, mortgage, HELOC, credit cards, mobile phones, Lena's emergency fund. The last one was a separate savings account I siphoned $5,000 into every month. The account she thought was a magical, regenerating gift from our parents. The work was methodical. I went account by account. First, the utilities. The online portal for the Chicago Power Company was simple. I was the account holder. I saw the payment overdue warning that had been generated the moment my automatic payment failed to post. I clicked on Account Settings. I clicked on Cancel Service. A small pop-up asked, "Are you sure service will be terminated within 24 hours?" I clicked Confirm. One down. I did the same for the gas, the water, and the internet. Cancel, cancel, cancel. Next, the credit cards. I logged into my Platinum account. I saw the charge from Cartier from 3 days ago, not a boutique. Cartier for an amount that made my stomach clench. It was pending. And then, today, the one from the boutique. Declined. I clicked on Manage Users. I saw my name, and under it Lena Rivera. Authorized user. I clicked the small Remove button. A pop-up, "This will permanently deactivate this user's card. Do you wish to proceed?" My cursor hovered. This was Lena's oxygen. I clicked Proceed. A small green banner appeared at the top of the screen. Lena Rivera has been successfully removed from your account. A wave of something light and almost dizzying washed over me. It was not triumph. It was just relief. I went to the home equity line of credit, the one they used for parties, for vacations, for the Astoria Grand Deposit. The automatic monthly interest payment was set to draw from my account in 3 days. I canceled the transfer. I logged out. They were adults. The bank knew how to find them. Finally, the cell phones. This one required a human. I dialed the carrier's customer service number. A polite, automated system answered. I navigated the prompts. Press 4 for Manage Your Account. Press 2 to add or remove a line. A human being picked up. A man with a tired voice in a call center thousands of miles away. "Thank you for calling. This is Mark. How can I help you today?" "Ms. Rivera." "Hello? Mark," I said, my voice perfectly level. "I am the primary account holder for my family plan. I need to remove 2 numbers from my account, effective immediately." "Yes, ma'am. I can help with that. Can you please verify the numbers you wish to remove?" I read him Evelyn's number. I read him Lena's number. "Okay," he said, the sound of typing in the background. "And just so you are aware, Ms. Rivera, both of these lines are still under contract. Removing them today will incur an early termination fee of $212 per line. That will appear on your next bill." "I understand," I said. "Please proceed." More typing. A brief pause. "All right. Ms. Rivera, the 2 lines have been successfully removed from your plan. They will be deactivated within the hour. Is there anything else I can help you with today?" "No, Mark," I said. That was everything. I hung up. I closed the laptop. I closed the binder. I sat very, very still. My heart, which had been hammering against my ribs, slowed its pace. It settled. The confirmation messages service canceled. User removed. Lines deactivated were like a series of small, satisfying clicks as a great, heavy machine finally powered down. Of course, the face-down phone began to buzz. It didn't just vibrate. It shimmied across the wooden table, a frantic, dying animal. I knew, without looking, what the messages would say. The hysteria would be peaking. The threats and accusations would be flying. I picked it up. Lena. "My phone is off. You turned off my phone. I am calling the police. Evelyn." "The house is dark. It is cold. You are destroying this family. Evelyn, I am ashamed to call you my daughter. I read the last one. You are destroying this family." I held the phone in my hand, my thumb over the text box. I typed a single reply. Not to the group, but to Evelyn. I am not destroying the family. I am just returning the bills. They are in your name now. I did not send it. I did something better. I walked out onto the private deck. The water of the lagoon was impossibly clear, the color of mouthwash, and warmer than the air. I dipped my feet in, tiny, silver fish, braver than I was, came to inspect my toes. I went back inside and made a cup of black coffee from the small machine. It was strong and bitter. I took my coffee, my notebook, and my guilt out onto the deck. I sat on the edge, my feet dangling in the warm, South Pacific water. I drank my coffee, and I began the real work. The real work was learning to sit still and do nothing. My mind, so trained for crisis, screamed at me, "You should call the airline. You should fly back. You should fix this. They are your family." The guilt was a physical thing, a tightening in my chest, a nausea that made the coffee taste like ash. I sat with it. I watched a small white crab scuttle across the deck. I felt the sun, hot and direct, on my shoulders, a set of wind chimes, made of shell or bamboo. I couldn't tell, stirred in the breeze. It was not a jangling, chaotic sound. It was a few, clear, wooden notes. Clack, clack, clack. It sounded like a period, the end of a sentence, a full stop. The sentence that had been running in my head for 7 years. The one that had been my operating system. I must be kind. I must be helpful. I must be the rock. And as I sat there, feet in the water, the guilt began to recede. It didn't vanish, but it backed off, like a tide going out, leaving behind a clean, wet sand realization. Kindness is not a permanent contract. Generosity is not a life sentence. I finished my coffee. I put the cup down. I picked up my phone, the buzzing, screaming, dying insect. I looked at the 37 new messages I had not read. I held down the power button on the side. The screen asked me if I really wanted to power down. I slid my thumb across the confirmation. The screen went black. The silence that rushed in was total. It was no longer just the absence of noise. It was the presence of peace. I sat on the deck for a long time, my feet in the water. As the sun began to climb, I had turned off the machine, and for the first time, I felt myself power on. The peace lasted for exactly 12 hours. I had not slept, not in the traditional sense. I had rebooted. I had entered a state of hibernation and emerged as something new, something with a harder, cleaner operating system. The sun was high, a brilliant white eye directly overhead, bleaching the turquoise of the lagoon to a pale, shimmering aqua. I sat on my deck, breathing in the salt, and for a few perfect moments, I was just a woman in a beautiful place. Then, I made the calculated decision to reconnect, not to them, to my world. I had a career, a reputation, a life outside of their parasitic demands. I needed to know what the fallout was, not in their dark, cold house, but in the sunlit world of my own achievements. I powered on the phone. It was not a gradual influx. It was a digital explosion. The device seized in my hand, vibrating with such violence it nearly fell into the water. It was a prolonged, epileptic fit as 2 days of condensed, weaponized hysteria slammed into the network. Missed calls, voicemails, text messages, but they were just the delivery system. The real attack was public. They had not been idle. While I was canceling utilities, they were canceling me. Evelyn and Lena had launched a coordinated, brilliant, and utterly devastating campaign. Not of anger, which I could have handled, but of concern. The most toxic, insidious weapon in their arsenal. Lena had posted on every platform, Instagram, Facebook, even her long-dormant Twitter feed. The photo they chose was a masterpiece of malicious cropping. It was taken at an Ironbridge Women in Leadership breakfast 2 years ago. I had been a keynote speaker. The original photo showed me at the podium, energized, passionate, leaning into the microphone as I made a complex point about ethical investments. They had cropped it. They zoomed in on my face, catching me mid-word, mid-breath. My eyes were wide. My mouth was open. In context, I was commanding a room of 200 people. Out of context. I looked manic. I looked unhinged. I looked, in a word, unstable. Lena's caption was a symphony of feigned heartbreak. I have debated for hours if I should post this, but my family is in crisis, and we need prayers. My beautiful, brilliant sister Avery is going through a severe and sudden mental health crisis. We are all heartbroken and trying desperately, from a distance, to get her the help she needs. She has disappeared, and we are terrified. Please, if you see her or hear from her, please contact our family, not her. She is not herself right now, and we just want our Avery back. Not herself. Contact our family, not her. It was a cage, built of soft, empathetic words. They were isolating me, cutting me off from any potential support, painting me as a delusional runaway. Evelyn's move was, as always, more targeted. She didn't use social media. She used the telephone. I was still reeling, my stomach churning with a nausea so profound I had to grip the railing. When my work laptop, the one I had opened to check on my own projects, chimed with a new email, it was not from my boss. It was from Mark Jensen, an old colleague from my first analyst team, a decent guy. We shared fantasy football stats sometimes. The subject line was just, checking in. Hey Avery, the email began. I hope this isn't weird, and I am probably overstepping, but I was talking to Elise and, well, word is circulating from HR. Your mother called them, she called the main human resources switchboard. I stopped breathing. The hot, humid air of the lagoon felt like a wet wool blanket, suffocating me. Avery, your mom told them you were having a complete psychological breakdown and were a danger to yourself. She said you were taking an indefinite and immediate medical leave. They are already pulling your active files. This doesn't sound like you at all. I know you've been under a lot of pressure, but are you okay? Is this true? Is this true? I stood up, knocking the wooden chair over. It clattered onto the deck. I walked to the edge of the balcony, my knuckles white on the railing. They had done it. The one line I never thought they would cross. It was not enough to drain my bank account. It was not enough to demand my time and energy. It was not enough to ban me from a wedding I was paying for. They had come for my name. They had come for my professional life. They had attacked my credibility, my competence, my one sacred space. They were redefining me. I was not Avery Rivera, senior analyst. I was not the responsible one. I was not the competent one. I was the crazy sister. I was the unstable employee. I was a person so unwell her mother had to intervene. The shame was a physical taste, like burnt copper in the back of my throat. It was a hot, agonizing, liquid burn. I felt my entire identity, the one I had painstakingly built over 33 years, begin to dissolve. And then, just as quickly as the shame had risen, it hit a fire break. It slammed into the new, cold core of my resolve and was instantly incinerated. The shame burned out. It left nothing behind but black, smoking ash and a cold, diamond-hard clarity. They had made a fatal error. They thought I was still playing by their rules. They thought shame was a weapon that still worked on me. It was not. They had declared war on my reality, and in a war of reality, I was the one with the ammunition, as if summoned by this new resolve. My personal phone, the one still buzzing with Lena's performative grief, rang. A real call. A Chicago number I did not recognize. I almost ignored it, but the new, cold clarity told me to answer. Hello, I said. My voice was low, steady. Is this Avery Rivera? A woman's voice asked. It was crisp, efficient, no nonsense. This is she. My name is Anna Clark. I am Derek Lang's cousin. I waited. The lapping of the lagoon was the only sound. I am also, she continued, his primary seed investor. I was at the dinner at Gibson's the other night. I saw the whole exchange. She paused, and I heard a keyboard clicking faintly in the background. I'm an analyst. Ms. Rivera, my job is to analyze risk. I've known Lena for 6 months. I've known Evelyn for about as long, and I don't believe a single goddamn word they are saying. I let out the breath I'd been holding for 2 days. It came out as a shaky, almost silent laugh. I'm calling, Anna said, her voice sharp, because you need to know what the narrative is back here. It has escalated. They are not just saying you're jealous. The story they are spinning to the entire wedding guest list is that you had a complete psychotic break because Derek chose Lena over you. The sheer, staggering, creative absurdity of it. I had met Derek exactly 3 times. They are telling people, Anna said, and I could hear the anger in her voice now, that you were obsessed with him, that you couldn't handle the rejection, and that your mother was forced to call your employer to get you the help you so desperately need. They are painting you as an unhinged, dangerous woman. She did it, I said, my voice barely a whisper. She actually called them. I figured, Anna said darkly. Listen to me. I don't know what you did to set them off, but they are trying to ruin you. As Derek's investor, I am deeply concerned about the character of the family he is marrying into. As a woman, I am furious. Do not let them control this. I have no intention of letting them, I said. My voice was no longer a whisper. It was cold steel. Good. I'm currently having my own conversation with Derek about the structural integrity of this wedding's finances, but I thought you should hear from someone who is not, clinically speaking, insane. She hung up. I turned from the railing. I was no longer on vacation. I was in a war room. I went back to the desk. I righted the fallen chair. I sat. I pulled the Rivera ledger from my bag. It was no longer just a record of their greed. It was my armory. I took a fresh tab divider from my briefcase with a black felt-tip pen. I wrote on the label in clear, block capitals. Section 5. Defamation and counter-narrative. My work until this point had been reactive. It was time to be proactive. I opened a new, encrypted spreadsheet on my work laptop. I was not going to fight their story of sickness. I was going to present my story of solvency. I built a new timeline, not just of payments, but of requests. I sifted through 7 years of emails and text messages, the ones I had saved for my own records. Email from Evelyn, March 2019. Darling, the hospital asked for the platinum card. It was so confusing, but you know I get flustered. Can you sort it out for me? You're my rock. I highlighted asked. Sort it out. Rock. Text from Lena. December 2022. Aves, I need those designer snow boots. My old ones are leaking. You're the only one who can help me. Please don't make me beg. I'm already so stressed. I highlighted need. Help me. Stressed. I screenshotted the text and placed it next to the $900 credit card charge from that same day. I was building a case, not for a courtroom, but for the court of public opinion. The full ledger was a 200-page monster. It was too much. It was overwhelming. I needed a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. I opened a blank document. At the top, I typed, Financial Summary, Rivera Family Accounts, 2017, 2024. I made it simple. I made it clean. A single page, mortgage, HELOC Lincoln Park property, paid in full by Avery Rivera. Utilities power, gas, water. Internet paid in full by Avery Rivera, Lena Rivera. Supplementary credit card, paid in full by Avery Rivera. Family mobile plan, paid in full by Avery Rivera. Emergency medical Evelyn Rivera, paid in full by Avery Rivera. Estimated total financial support provided, I ran the number. It was just over $500,000. At the bottom of this one-page summary, I typed a single sentence in bold. I am not experiencing a mental health crisis. I am, however, no longer subsidizing this family. This was good, but it wasn't enough. They were attacking my reputation. I would defend it with public, indisputable facts. I logged into the Cook County Recorder of Deeds public database. It took me 90 seconds. I paid the $12 convenience fee. I downloaded the PDF of the deed for the Lincoln Park house, my name, their names. I downloaded the PDF of the home equity line of credit, the second mortgage they had taken out. The lien was clear, public, and legally binding. My name was the primary guarantor. These were not private documents, they were facts, as if summoned by the thought. My personal phone lit up. A text from an unknown number. Derek Avery. This is Derek. I just got an urgent notification from the bank about the HELOC payment. It's in default, and the caterer just called. The deposit check bounced. A pause. A new message. Derek, Lena she is not making sense. She's just crying. She said you always handled the house stuff. I looked at the HELOC statement. I see your name. I see a lot of transfers. Avery. Lena never said any of this. Can you please call me? I looked at his message. Please call me. He sounded confused. He sounded like the lamb I'd seen at the steakhouse, finally noticing the smell of blood in the air. But I owed him nothing. I was not his financial analyst. I was not his keeper. I was not responsible for the lies his fiancée had told him. My silence was the answer. Let him sit in the data. Let him do his own analysis. I went back to my one-page summary. I added one final line, a note to myself, a new mantra for my new life. The truth stands. It does not need to shout. I closed the laptop. The digital assault from Chicago was still raging. I could feel the vibrations through the wood of the desk, but the attacks were no longer hitting me. They were hitting a wall of receipts, a wall of my own making, and it was time to show them just how high and how strong that wall really was. The rage had burned out. The shame, which had felt like a physical scorching, was gone. What was left in its place was a sharp, cold, and beautifully clean architecture. It was the architecture of a plan. My objective was not, and had never been, to expose them. I was not going to engage in a messy public brawl on social media. I was not going to make a tearful, counter-accusatory video. That was their arena. That was Evelyn's theater. And I refused to be dragged onto her stage as a bit player. No, my goal was surgical. I would not shout my truth. I would simply place the evidence where it could not be ignored. I would use the very platform they had constructed for their grandest performance, Lena's wedding, as the backdrop. The truth wouldn't need a spotlight. It would simply turn the main lights on, revealing the cheapness of the set and the desperation of the actors. I looked at the digital files on my work laptop, spread out across the screen in the humid air of the bungalow. The spreadsheet, the one-page summary, the scanned public record PDFs of the deed, and the home equity line of credit. This was the data, but data, to be effective in their world, needed to be physical. It needed to have weight. I contacted the hotel's business center. I need professional printing and binding services, I said to the concierge, my voice calm and clear. Executive quality. This is for a presentation. I finalized the document. It was not the entire, chaotic 200-page ledger. That was my reference. This was the deliverable. I kept it clean, the one-page summary as the executive overview, followed by a detailed, itemized timeline of the major expenses: the mortgage, the HELOC, the cosmetic surgery, the ring. At the back, I included the undeniable, public record documents as the appendix, no emotional commentary, just the facts. When the hotel staff delivered the results to my bungalow 2 hours later, they were perfect. I had requested 2 hard copies. They were bound in a deep, sapphire blue cardstock cover, a color that perfectly matched the lagoon at dusk. They felt heavy in my hands, solid, real. I took a sheet of the thick, creamy hotel stationery. I wrote a short note, the same note, for both copies. My handwriting was steady, the penmanship of an analyst, not a victim. Here is a record of the financial support I have provided since 2017. I am not looking for an apology. I am not looking for repayment. I am only asking that you stop the fabrications. I am not unwell. I am unwilling. Stop telling people I am. I signed my name. I did not write love. I did not write your daughter. I just wrote Avery Rivera. I folded the notes and tucked one inside the cover of each binder. The plan was taking shape, but I was not a fool. I was not going to win a battle only to lose a war. I had to ensure my heist was, in fact, moral, and more importantly, legal. I was an analyst, not an activist. I knew the line between revealing a truth and violating privacy could be thin, especially when it came to family and money. I made a call, a secure, encrypted video call on my work laptop to my oldest friend, Jason. Jason was not just a friend from college. He was a partner at a litigation firm in New York. He was sharp, ruthless in his profession, and entirely on my side. His face appeared on my screen, grinning. "Avery, you look tan and terrifyingly calm. This must be the eye of the storm call." "It is," I said. "Hypothetical. If Person A has been paying the bills for Persons B and C for 7 years, and Persons B and C are now publicly defaming Person A, claiming she is mentally unstable, is Person A legally allowed to show the record of those bills to an interested party A? Person D, who is engaged to Person B?" Jason's smile widened. It was not a nice smile. It was a lawyer's smile. "You're not talking about your personal, private bank statements, are you? You're talking about shared debts, mortgages with all your names on them, public deeds, utility accounts for which you are the primary holder." "Exactly. And you're not planning to plaster these documents on a billboard on the side of the highway. You are planning a targeted, private disclosure to relevant, involved parties." "Correct. Then it's not slander or libel, because it's the provable truth. It's not a privacy violation, because you are a primary, named party on every document you're sharing. You're just presenting the facts of a business arrangement that has soured." He leaned closer to the camera, his voice dropping. "You're clean, Avery. Just stick to the facts you can hold in your hand. The receipts do not, under any circumstances, get pulled into the emotional mud. They live in the mud. You are just visiting." "Stick to the receipts," I repeated. "Got it. Go get me, Rivera." He disconnected. The path was clear. I logged back into the airline's website. My vacation was over. It was time to go back. I booked a flight. Not home to my apartment. Back to Chicago. The wedding was in 3 days. Saturday. I booked a flight that would land at O'Hare on Saturday morning, just before noon. There was no point in arriving earlier. There would be no more phone calls, no more pleading texts, no more attempts at reason from a distance. The time for negotiation was over. I would fly directly into the eye of the storm, as I booked. I thought about Derek. Anna Clark's call had confirmed he was the unknown variable. He was the one walking into this with, presumably, clean hands and an open heart. He was also the one unknowingly signing up to take my place as the family's primary financial source. He deserved to know the full scope of the liability he was acquiring. I opened the new notebook, the one from the plane. I jotted down the key questions, not for me, for him. The questions I would leave him with, the ones he would have to ask himself when he looked at the blue binder. Who are you marrying? Are you marrying the woman she pretends to be, or the dependent she actually is? Are you prepared to take over my role? Do you want a partner, or do you want a lifelong, very expensive client? Do you want honesty, or do you want theater? I closed the notebook. He was an analyst, too. He would have to run the numbers for himself. Next, I turned my attention to the most grievous wound, the most dangerous one, the attack on my career. I opened my work email. I composed a new message. It was addressed directly to Miss Johnson, the head of human resources at Ironbridge, and I carbon copied my mentor and department head, Elise Hartman. The tone was polite. It was professional. It was Arctic cold. Subject: correction of employment status. False report. Dear Ms. Johnson, it has come to my attention that a false report was filed with your office by my mother, Evelyn Rivera, claiming I was experiencing a psychological breakdown and required an immediate medical leave of absence. I am writing to formally correct the record. I am not on medical leave. I have not requested medical leave. I am in excellent health and am currently utilizing my accrued personal vacation time for a private family matter. Any and all information provided by Evelyn Rivera or Lena Rivera regarding my mental state or employment status is inaccurate, non-consensual, and should be disregarded. I will be returning to the office, as scheduled, after my vacation block concludes. Please confirm receipt of this email and that this correction has been noted in my file. Thank you. Avery Rivera. I hit send, and then I activated the crucial setting for the email, track delivery, track read. I would need the receipt. The digital proof that they had been notified of the truth. Long before I ever set foot in that ballroom, the plan was almost complete. I just needed one more piece, a safe harbor, a witness, a neutral party. My family wasn't entirely composed of actors and enablers. I called my Aunt Ruth. Ruth was my father's older sister, a nurse practitioner, a pragmatist, a woman who had seen Evelyn's histrionics for 40 years and remained entirely unimpressed. She was the family's Switzerland neutral, but observant and deeply moral. Avery, she answered, her voice warm but wary. I've been hearing stories. Aunt Ruth, I said. I'm sure you have, and they're all true. From a certain point of view, I am the reason the power is off. I am the reason Lena's cards are declined, and I am in Bora Bora. There was a long pause, and then a dry, barking chuckle. Well, it's about damn time. What do you need, kid? I'm coming back, Saturday, for the wedding. You're walking into the lion's den. Avery, you know that, right? Your mother is spinning a tale that would win a Tony. I know. I'm not going to cause a scene. I'm not going to scream. I'm just going to deliver a wedding gift. But I need someone there who isn't on their payroll. I need a pair of eyes that sees the truth. Can you just be there? And can I fly into O'Hare and come to your place first? I don't want to stay in my apartment. My door is always open, Ravenswood. The spare room is waiting for you. You come straight here. Thank you, Ruth. Avery, she said, just before I hung up, her voice suddenly serious. You're not the crazy one. Don't you ever let them make you think you are. I hung up. I stood. The plan was set. I opened my suitcase and looked at my clothes. I had packed for a beach vacation. It didn't matter. I didn't need armor. I just needed to be myself. I pulled out the one nice dress I had brought for a potential dinner. It was a simple silk sheath, the color sapphire blue. It would match the binders. I laid it out, the dress, the 2 blue binders, holding 7 years of truth. I checked my phone. The read receipt from HR had just chimed. Your message to Ms. Johnson was read at 10:17 a.m. Central Time. The first domino had fallen. I booked the car service, not to O'Hare, from O'Hare, on Saturday, directly to the Astoria Grand Hotel. I would arrive just as the cocktail hour began. I set a reminder on my phone for Saturday afternoon. Activate audio recorder. I wouldn't use it unless I was verbally attacked or they tried to lie about what was said. But as Jason taught me, the best defense is a good record. I stood on the balcony one last time, looking at the impossible blue water. I was leaving paradise to return to the inferno, but I felt calm. I felt centered. I had one last thought, a final reminder to myself, the one that would carry me through the fire. Do not win with rage. Win with the receipts. The flight from Los Angeles was a jarring, pressurized tube of recycled air, a violent contrast to the open, salty freedom of the bungalow. We descended into Chicago not through a sunrise, but through a thick, gray November ceiling. The plane broke through the clouds, and the city was exactly as I had left it, a sprawling grid of wet concrete and steel, muted under a sky the color of dirty dishwater. It wasn't raining, not really. It was a cold, persistent mist, the kind that soaks into your bones and makes you forget that the sun exists. The smell that hit me as I walked from the jet bridge into O'Hare was not of tiara flowers, but of stale Cinnabon and industrial-strength coffee. I was home. I didn't take a car service. I took the Blue Line. It felt appropriate. The rattling, Fluorescent-lit train car carried me from the manufactured world of the airport, through the quiet, working neighborhoods, and deposited me at the Addison stop, a few blocks from Ravenswood, from Aunt Ruth's. Her apartment was in a classic Chicago brick 3-flat, the kind with a small, neat garden in the front, now brown and dormant for the winter. The air smelled like wet leaves and distant, cold traffic. Ruth opened the door before I could knock, as if she'd been waiting by the window. She didn't hug me. She wasn't a hugger. She just looked me up and down. A long, appraising stare from a woman who had spent 40 years in emergency rooms and could spot a lie, or a fever, from 50 paces. She nodded once, a sharp, definitive gesture. "You look better than I expected," she said, her voice dry as toast. "You look solid. I was half expecting a refugee. Get in. It's freezing out here." Her apartment was the antithesis of my own sterile, high-rise condo. It was warm. It smelled of old books, strong black coffee, and a hint of the lemon oil she used on her ancient, dark wood furniture. A cat, a massive orange tabby, regarded me from the arm of a worn velvet chair and dismissed me with a slow blink. "Coffee's on. You're in the spare room," she said, gesturing with the mug already in her hand. "The one with the bad-tempered radiator. You know the drill." I dropped my bag. The 2 blue binders, tucked safely inside, made a heavy, reassuring thud as the bag hit the hardwood floor. I poured a mug of coffee. It was thick, black, and hot enough to burn. It was perfect. Ruth sat at her kitchen table, watching me. "So," she said, taking a sip from her own mug. "They've gone nuclear. You know." "I know," I said, leaning against the counter. "I got the fallout report. Evelyn called me, twice, crying." Ruth rolled her eyes so hard it was almost a performance in itself. A full 5-star production. How her heart was broken. How her baby, Lena, was destroyed. How her other daughter, her rock, she said the word with profound sarcasm, had, well, snapped was the word she used. Snapped like a dry twig. I just nodded, drinking the coffee. "She loves an audience, Avery," Ruth said, her voice softening just a fraction, but her eyes were sharp. "You've got to remember that. Your mother has a mortal terror of an empty theater. The truth doesn't matter. The story matters. And you just took a flamethrower to her script." "I didn't mean to." The words came out automatically, the old reflex. "The hell you didn't," Ruth snapped, but her voice was almost approving. "You just didn't mean to do it publicly. You've been setting small, private fires for years, and they've been stamping them out. This time you used an accelerant." She pointed to a stack of photo albums on a low bookshelf. "Go on, look at that one. The green one, 1998, I think." I pulled the heavy album. It was stiff. The plastic pages yellowed. I opened it. It was Lena's 8th birthday party. There she was, a poof of pink ruffles and blonde curls, blowing out candles. And there, standing next to her, was Evelyn, my mother, her hand possessively on Lena's shoulder, beaming at the camera, her smile wide and proprietary. And there I was, Avery, age 12. I was on the absolute edge of the frame. My arm cut in half by the border. I was holding a stack of used pink paper plates, clearly in the middle of cleaning up. I wasn't looking at the camera. I was looking at my mother's hand on Lena's shoulder, my expression unreadable, but my posture screaming with the invisible weight I was already carrying. "She always had her favorite," Ruth said quietly from the table. "Not you. You were too competent. You didn't need her. Lena was a full-time job, and Evelyn loves a project she can show off." I closed the album. I put it back on the shelf. The image was seared into my brain. The hand, the shoulder, the girl at the edge. "I'm not going to the wedding to fight her, Ruth," I said, turning back to the kitchen. "I'm not." "Then why are you going?" "Because she banned me." The words hung in the warm, coffee-scented air. "She banned me, and she told my job I was insane. She tried to take my name. I'm not going there to shout. I'm just going to be present with the facts. Ruth nodded. A slow, long, understanding nod. Good, she said. Don't go to hurt them. Avery, that's their game, and they'll always win it. You're right. You go to unbind yourself. I stayed in the apartment for the rest of the day. Ruth left for her shift at the hospital, and the place was mine. The silence was different from the bungalow. It was an old, city silence, punctuated by the hiss of the radiator and the distant wail of a siren. I needed to walk. I needed to feel the city under my feet. I bundled up and walked down Lincoln Avenue. Just as the shops were closing and the evening rush began, the mist was back, and the streetlights cast hazy, neo-noir halos on the wet pavement. I passed a small cafe, one I used to frequent. Through the window, I saw two women from my old neighborhood book club. They were leaning in, their faces serious. As I passed, I caught a scrap of their conversation, loud enough to cut through the glass. No, I'm serious. Her mother said she's unstable. Just lost it. I kept walking. I didn't slow down. I didn't turn my head. But a strange, cold smile touched my lips. Unstable, I whispered to the cold air. Unstable is a $500,000 bill with no one to pay it. That's the only thing that's unstable. I turned a corner and saw a small, independent stationery shop. On impulse, I went in. The bell on the door chimed. The shop smelled of leather and paper and ink. I bought a new journal. A simple one, bound in thick, dark brown leather, no lines. The pages were thick, creamy, and blank. I bought a heavy, black fountain pen to go with it. I took it back to Ruth's. I sat at her kitchen table. I opened the first page and wrote, "Paper doesn't gossip." My laptop was open. A new email had arrived. It was from Elise Hartman, my mentor at Ironbridge. She was a managing director, a woman who had shattered every glass ceiling and had the scars and the corner office to prove it. She was, in a word, a legend. And she was my boss. Her email was in response to my formal correction to HR. Subject: recorrection of employment status Avery. HR has confirmed receipt and updated your file. The noise has been contained. I am not your mother. I am not your friend. I am your manager. But I will give you one piece of advice, as someone who has also had to build fences. Boundaries are not punishments. They are the structures that create sustainable peace. Your work is excellent. I expect to see you, with your fences intact, when your vacation is over. Elise. I read the email 3 times. Boundaries are not punishments. They are the structures that create sustainable peace, a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying. The fear of my professional life being truly over, lifted. I typed a single, short reply. Elise, thank you. I am not choosing to be loud. I am choosing a silence that has milestones. I will see you when I'm back. I hit send. Another door was closing, the emotional one. I had spent so many years trying to earn their love, to fix their problems, to be the good daughter, and in one clarifying week, I had learned that I was not the one who was broken. I was not the one who needed fixing. I was finally, profoundly, forgiving myself. Forgiving myself for taking so long to see the truth. Forgiving the 12-year-old girl in the photograph for believing she had to clean up everyone else's mess. That evening, I did the final preparation. I took the 2 sapphire blue binders from my bag. I had a label maker in my briefcase. I always have a label maker. I typed out the words. The machine whirred and spat out the thick, white, embossed tape. Rivera Ledger. I pressed it onto the first binder, 2017-2024. I pressed it onto the second. They were no longer just binders. They were artifacts. They were the sum of the debt, and they were the receipt for my freedom. I stood in the middle of Ruth's quiet living room. I opened one of the binders to the first page, the 1-page summary. I took a breath. I read the opening line aloud, just to hear how it sounded in my own voice. I am not experiencing a mental health crisis. My voice did not shake. It was not loud, but it was not small. It was clear. It was steady. It was the voice of a woman who was finished negotiating. I closed the binder. The snap of the cover was a definitive, satisfying sound. I looked at the clock on Ruth's wall. The small, away second hand was sweeping toward the top. My eyes followed it. 1:10, 1:11. It was a stupid private thing, a digital superstition. 111. The numbers of a new beginning, of alignment, my own private signal. I was ready. The taxi pulled up under the grand, gas-lit portico of the Astoria Grand. It was precisely 6:15 p.m., the cocktail hour, according to the gilt-edged invitation I had never received, was in full swing. I paid the driver. I didn't get out immediately. I sat for a moment in the warm, anonymous darkness of the back seat. In my lap, I held the 2 sapphire blue binders, one for them, one for me, just in case. My phone, in my pocket, was on, with the audio recorder app active. Not for a confrontation, for the record. I had left my single suitcase with Aunt Ruth. I had nothing with me but my handbag and the binders. I was wearing the simple, sapphire blue silk dress. No extravagant jewelry, just my watch. I stepped out of the car. The doorman, in his heavy braided coat, looked at me, then at the binder, a flicker of professional curiosity in his eyes. He clearly expected a gift box from Tiffany's, not an office supply. He held the towering brass and glass door open. I stepped inside. The lobby of the Astoria Grand was a symphony of staged opulence. It was not just a room, it was a statement. The ceilings were at least 40 feet high. Coffered and gilded, marble, a warm, veined cream, was everywhere. The air was heavy with the scent of thousands of white flowers, lilies, and roses, overwhelmingly sweet, and the faint, expensive smell of beeswax from the hundreds of candles that glittered from every surface. From the mezzanine above, the sound of a string quartet drifted down. They were playing something light and classical, a piece designed to sound like old money, to be the perfect, elegant background noise for champagne and meaningless conversation. I followed the sound. Up a sweeping, curved staircase, the marble cold beneath my thin-soled shoes. The main ballroom was a sea of gold, round tables draped in ivory, towering centerpieces of white orchids, just as Lena had planned, and the soft, flattering glow of what must have been $10,000 in candlelight. The crowd, about 200 people, was a murmur of dark suits and glittering jewel-toned dresses. I stood in the arched doorway for a single, calculated beat, heads turned, not all at once, but in a slow, rolling wave, the way animals in a herd sense a new, unknown presence. I saw distant cousins, old family friends, people who had known me since I was the quiet girl in the background, holding the plates, their eyes, one after another, registered my presence. I saw polite confusion, then a dawning, sharp flicker of, what was it? Yes, gossip. The story had clearly made the rounds. I was the unhinged sister. I was the drama. I took a step forward, onto the thick plush carpet. And my presence, my simple, quiet entrance, acted as a summons. She materialized from the crowd, a whirlwind of champagne-colored lace and maternal fury. Evelyn. She moved so quickly she was almost running, her face a perfect, theatrical mask of outrage. She got to me before I had taken 3 steps into the room, planting herself directly in my path, a human blockade. Her hand came up, not to touch me, but to signal stop to a taxi. "I cannot believe you," she hissed. Her voice was low, but it vibrated with a rage that was, for once, entirely real. The stage actress had disappeared. The cornered animal was here. "You were not invited. You are not welcome here." A small, silent circle formed around us. The murmur of the room near the door died. I looked at her. I did not raise my voice. I did not flinch. I simply held up the blue binder in my right hand. "I'm bringing the wedding gift, Mother." I stepped around her. It was like pushing through a physical force field. I heard her sharp, incredulous gasp behind me, but I did not stop. I walked. My heels sank into the carpet, slowing my progress, making the walk feel deliberate, almost ceremonial. I kept my chin up, my eyes focused. I was not looking at the crowd, though I could feel the burn of their collective stare. I was looking at my destination. There, near the front of the ballroom, under a massive floral-draped arch, stood the wedding party. And there he was, Derek Lang. He looked pale, his suit well-tailored, but his face drawn with a tension that did not belong on a groom. He was holding a glass of champagne, but he was not drinking it. And beside him, Lena, if I was simple silk, she was an explosion, a work of art. Her dress was a mountain of white lace, crystals, and tulle, a delicate, sparkling crown, a floral tiara as she had no doubt called it. A floral tiara rested on her perfect blonde hair. She was a statue. She was a bride doll, placed perfectly in her box, smiling a wide, brilliant, and entirely empty smile. She was radiant. She was the star of the show. As I approached, that smile faltered. It froze on her face. Her eyes, wide and blue, tracked my approach. I saw her hand tighten, clutching Derek's arm. I stopped a polite 5 feet from them, close enough to be heard, far enough to be unthreatening. Derek looked at me, his expression a complicated, warring mess of confusion, anger, and a desperate, flickering hope. "Avery," he said, his voice low. "What is this? What are you doing?" Lena said nothing. She just stared, her painted-on smile now a grimace of pure, terrified hatred. I looked directly at Derek. I ignored Lena. I ignored the dozens of people who were now openly watching, the string quartet having faltered into a confused silence. I held out the blue binder, the one labeled Rivera Ledger 2017-2024. "Derek," I said. My voice was calm. It was not loud, but in the sudden, profound hush of that grand ballroom, it carried. Everyone heard it. I was told I had to beg for forgiveness to come to this wedding. I chose not to, but I did bring a gift. I placed the binder into his free hand. He took it, his grip clumsy, as if it were heavy, which, of course, it was. "This is my gift," I said, my voice still perfectly level, the voice of an analyst presenting her findings. "It's a story, your story, Lena's story." I paused, then delivered the line. "It's the story, paid in full." He just stared at it. "What? What is this?" he stammered, looking at the cover. "Open it," I said. He did. He fumbled with the cover, his champagne glass tilting dangerously. He opened it to the first page, the table of contents. I had made it very, very clear. Section 1, Mortgage HELOC, Lincoln Park. Section 2, Hospital Medical, Evelyn Rivera. Section 3, Wardrobe Lifestyle, Lena Rivera Credit Card. Section 4, Utilities Communications, Power, Water, Mobile. Section 5, Timeline of Financial Support Requests, Appendix Public Deed, Lien Documentation. I watched his face. It was a fascinating, terrible, and rapid progression. First, polite confusion, then a slight frown of disbelief. He flipped a page. He saw the one-page summary, the bold, black number at the bottom. His face did not just go pale. It went gray. The blood physically drained from it. His eyes, wide with shock, scanned the document. He flipped again, deeper into the file, past the summary, into the itemized receipts. His hand was shaking. He saw the copy of the wire transfer for the ring. He saw it all. The polite, awkward groom who had greeted me at Gibson's was gone. In his place was a man who looked like he had just been punched in the soul. The color of his face, the slack jaw, the way his eyes darted back and forth across the page, comprehending. It was the look of a man watching his entire future, his entire perceived reality, shatter into a million pieces in real time. He had, as Anna Clark had noted, been given a set of data. He was finally truly analyzing it. You, a voice, shrill and venomous, cut through the pin-drop silence. Evelyn had arrived. She shoved past a guest, her champagne-lace dress rustling. Her face no longer a mask of outrage, but a contortion of pure, unfiltered hate. "You are low," she spat, her voice a carrying, theatrical whisper that everyone in the first 10 rows could hear. "You are a low, jealous, pathetic creature. To come here, to do this. You are a sickness." I turned to my mother. I was not angry. I was not sad. I was just done. "I am not low, Mother," I said, my voice just as clear, just as carrying. "I just stopped paying for the lies. The lies are low. I'm just the accountant." "Evelyn," a voice said, a voice I had barely heard in 7 years, a voice that was usually the sound of a newspaper rustling or a muted television. "Evelyn, that's enough." My father, Charles, he was standing just behind Evelyn, his tuxedo ill-fitting, his face ashen. He had never, not once, stood up to her in my entire adult life. The room, which had been silent, became something else. It became a vacuum. The photographer, who had been instinctively, almost ghoulishly, snapping photos of the confrontation, lowered his camera. His hand froze in mid-air. The string quartet had stopped playing entirely. The lead violinist was holding her bow suspended, her mouth slightly open. This was the pin-drop silence. The only sound was the faint whoosh of the ventilation system, and into that vacuum, Lena, the silent, frozen bride doll, finally found her voice. She broke. It was not a cry of sadness. It was a shriek of pure, undiluted rage. It was the sound of a child whose favorite toy had been taken. "You're just jealous," she wailed. The sound was so loud, so raw. It made several guests physically flinch. "You're jealous. You're old. You're alone. And you're jealous of me. You wanted him. You're trying to ruin my life." The accusation was so wild, so patently absurd, that it didn't even land. It just hung in the air. A pathetic, dying firework. She lunged at me, her hands clawed. The bride doll turning into a harpy. Derek, still holding the binder, instinctively grabbed her arm, holding her back. I did not move. I did not step back. I looked at my sister, the sister I had fed, and clothed, and housed, the sister whose life I had, in all meaningful ways, subsidized so she could stand here, in this $10,000 dress, and accuse me of jealousy. I let the silence stretch. I let everyone in the room look at her. Her face blotchy and red under the expensive makeup, her tiara slightly askew, a beautiful, ruined thing. Then, I gave her my last line. "I have been silently paying for you for 7 years. Lena," I said. My voice was not angry. It was almost kind. It was deeply, profoundly tired. "Today, my silence pays me back." My final line hung in the air, sharp and clean. "Today, my silence pays me back." The silence that followed was different. It was not the stunned silence of shock. It was the absolute, profound silence of completion. The show was over. The house lights had just come up. Every eye in that golden, candlelit ballroom, every guest, every cousin, every waiter, moved as if pulled by a single, invisible string. They moved from Lena's blotchy, furious face to Derek's. He was the variable. He was the one who had not known. He was the man who had, 10 minutes prior, been the happiest man in the room. Derek did not look at Lena. He did not look at me. He looked down at the sapphire blue binder in his hands. He looked at it as if it were not a stack of paper, but a living, venomous thing he had been forced to hold. He ran his thumb over the embossed label, Rivera Ledger. He closed the cover. The snap of the binder ring was unnervingly loud. A single, metallic click in the dead quiet. He took a long, shuddering breath, the kind a man takes just before he dives into freezing water. He set the binder down. He did not throw it. He did not hand it off. He bent at the waist, a gesture of profound, almost funereal respect, and placed it carefully on the plush ivory carpet, right next to Lena's feet. Then, he straightened up. He finally looked at her. He looked at his bride, at her heaving chest, her tear-streaked, makeup-ruined face, her diamond tiara, which had indeed slipped, hanging ridiculously over one eyebrow. He was an analyst. He had seen the data. He respected the numbers. He said only 2 sentences. He spoke them quietly, directly to her, but in the vacuum of that room, his voice carried to the rafters. "I need the truth, Lena," he said. His voice was not angry. It was not sad. It was just empty, utterly hollowed out, a void. "I need the truth more than I need wedding pictures." He turned. He did not run. He did not storm out. He simply put his hands into the pockets of his tuxedo trousers, turned his back on his bride, on the flowers, on the 200 guests, on the wreckage of his own life, and he walked. He walked past me. He did not look at me. I was not his savior. I was just the auditor who had delivered the bad news. He walked past my mother, whose mouth was a round, silent O of disbelief. The script had not prepared her for this. He walked down the long aisle of the ballroom, his footsteps completely silent on the thick carpet, a ghost moving through his own wedding. He reached the marble entrance of the grand hall. He stepped onto the marble. Click, clack, click. The sound of his dress shoes on the hard stone was the only sound in the world. It was a metronome, counting down the end. He did not look back. He pushed through the heavy, brass and glass doors. The doors swung shut behind him with a deep, hydraulic hush, and then, the thud of the latch mechanism seating. It was not a slam. It was a verdict. It was the sound of a bank vault closing for the night. It was the sound of done. For a full 5 seconds, Lena remained frozen, her arms still half raised from when Derek had blocked her lunge. Her mind, her entire operating system, was clearly struggling to process the new data. He left. He left the stage. He left the script. And then, she did not faint. She did not cry for him. She collapsed. It was not a graceful Victorian swoon into a waiting hero's arms. Her knees, her spine, her entire framework of entitlement, simply unlocked. The mountain of white lace, crystal, and tulle, the $10,000 dress, crumpled. She went straight down, a puppet whose strings had been severed, landing in a heap on the floor, next to the blue binder that contained her entire, fraudulent life. She did not lose consciousness. She began to wail, but it was not a wail of heartbreak. It was the sound I had heard once before, when I was 12 and she was 8, and her birthday pony rental had been canceled due to rain. It was the sound of pure, thwarted, infantile rage, the sound of a world that had, for the first time, refused to bend to her will. She had not lost her man. She had lost her audience. She had lost her script. And that, finally, broke the spell for everyone else. Evelyn, who had been staring, paralyzed, at the doors Derek had exited, spun back to me. Her face was no longer pale. It was a deep, mottled, dangerous red. The actress was gone. The mask was gone. This was the real, raw, elemental creature. She did not lower her voice. She screamed. She pointed a finger at me, her arm trembling with the force of her fury, an instrument of divine vengeance. "You!" she shrieked, and the word was a weapon, a physical blow. "You did this. You destroyed this family. You have ruined us. You have ruined everything. You are a monster, a cold, jealous monster." I did not move. I let the accusation hit me. I had been waiting my whole life to hear it, to have the subtext finally become text. You are the monster. It was almost a relief. I looked at her, at the woman who had called my employer, at the woman who had subsidized her own life by draining mine. I did not destroy the family. "Mother," I said. My voice was still calm, still low. The contrast to her shriek was stark. "I just unplugged the funding. I just stopped paying for the fake." The word hung in the air. Fake. And the room, which had been frozen, finally broke. It was not applause. It was not cheering. It was a low, rising murmur, a rustling. I saw what was happening. It was a social realignment. People were not moving toward me. I was not their hero. They were moving away from Evelyn, guests, who had been leaning in, fascinated by the drama, now turned their backs. They turned to each other, their whispers sharp. They were suddenly fascinated by the champagne flutes in their hands. They moved, in small, distinct clusters, toward the bar, toward the exits, toward anything that was not the horrifying, exposed, raw nerve of my family. The performance was over, and the audience was dismissing the actors. They were embarrassed to have been caught watching. I saw Anna Clark, Derek's cousin, near the back. She was not whispering. She was watching me, her arms crossed. She gave me a single, sharp nod, a nod of professional respect. I saw Aunt Ruth. She was standing by a pillar, her coat still on. She had, as requested, been my witness. Her face was grim, but her eyes, when they met mine, were proud. Evelyn was still breathing heavily, her hand at her chest, looking around for an ally. But her audience was gone. She was just a woman, in an expensive dress, yelling in an empty room, and then I saw my father, Charles. He had not moved. He was still standing just behind Evelyn, a ghost in a tuxedo. He was looking at me, past his wife, past the wreckage of the wedding. He looked, for the first time, old, defeated, a man who had made a lifetime of small compromises until his entire soul was one large concession. His mouth moved. He formed a word. He did not say it aloud. It was a silent, pathetic, gut-wrenching mime. Sorry. It was the apology of a man who had no currency left to pay his debts. It was the apology of a coward. It was, I knew, the absolute most he was capable of, and it was worth nothing. I held his gaze for 1 second. I did not nod. I did not forgive him. I just saw him. I saw it all. And then I turned. My job was done. The audit was complete. I turned my back on Lena, who was still a sobbing heap of lace on the floor. I turned my back on Evelyn, who was now sputtering into silence. Realizing her power had evaporated, I turned my back on the ghost of my father. I walked the same path Derek had, but I was not escaping. I was being discharged. My heels, too, were silent on the carpet. I reached the marble. Click, clack, click, the sound of my own 2 feet, carrying my own weight, walking out of my own accord. I did not need an audience. I did not need their applause. I did not need their validation, or their apologies, or their understanding. My strength was in the walking. My strength was in knowing I had done what was necessary, and I did not need a single person to co-sign it. I pushed through the brass and glass doors, out into the grand, cathedral-like lobby. The string quartet, I noted, had tentatively, tragically, begun to play again. I did not look back. The doorman, the same one as before, held the door for me. His face was a perfect, professional mask of indifference, but his eyes were fascinated. He had clearly heard the entire thing. I stepped out from under the portico, and the world had changed. The Chicago sky, which had been a low, gray, oppressive ceiling of mist, had, by some small meteorological miracle, broken. A weak, watery, late afternoon sun was attempting to shine. It cast long, dramatic, noir-like shadows on the wet pavement, and the air was not the superheated, floral-choked, perfume-heavy atmosphere of the ballroom. It was cold. It was clean. It was sharp. It smelled like Lake Michigan and concrete and reality. I stood on the top step, above the street, and I took a deep, shuddering breath. It was the first breath I had taken in 33 years that did not require permission. It was the first breath that did not taste of obligation. It just tasted like air. My phone, in my pocket, buzzed, not with the frantic, hysterical vibrations of my family. It was a single, clean text. I pulled it out. Elise Hartman. Elise. How did it go? I looked at the text. I looked at the watery sun. I typed my reply. Avery. The truth stood. I hit send. A yellow taxi. Seeing me standing there in a silk dress, pulled to the curb, I walked down the steps. I opened the back door. I slid in. And I realized I was still holding the second blue binder, the copy, my copy. I looked at it. The Rivera Ledger, 2017, 2024. My prison, and my key. I placed it on the seat beside me. It was not a weapon anymore. It was not a shield. It was just a stack of paper. The evidence, its job completed, was now just a file. "Where to, lady?" the cab driver asked, his eyes on me in the rearview mirror. Before I could answer, a woman tapped on the window. I flinched, my heart leaping. I half expected to see Evelyn, her face pressed to the glass, but it was not. It was a young woman in a trench coat, holding a large camera. The wedding photographer, no. She looked different, scrappier, a freelance reporter, maybe, who had heard the commotion at the door. "That was intense," she said, breathlessly. You just walked out. Do you have any comment? Who were you?" I looked at her. This stranger, this new, potential audience member, asking for another line, another performance. I was done. I smiled at her, the first real light smile of the day. "Yes," I said. "Pay your own bills." I hit the lock button on the door. I turned to the driver. "Ravenswood," I said. "Addison and Lincoln, go." The taxi pulled away from the curb, leaving the woman and the grand, false facade of the Astoria Grand behind. We hit a red light at the corner. I leaned my head back against the worn vinyl of the seat. The adrenaline was draining, leaving behind a profound, almost floaty exhaustion. And I realized, for the first time, the source of the lightness. I had been carrying that binder, in all its forms, for 7 years. It was a physical weight, a $500,000 anchor, and now I had put it down. I had handed it off. The taxi door was closed. The binder was on the seat next to me. And I, Avery Rivera, for the first time in my adult life, felt lighter than a stack of paper. The morning after, I woke up on the fold-out sofa in Aunt Ruth's living room. The one with the springs that complained every time I moved. The sun was a weak, gray, Chicago-style apology, filtering through the blinds. My first thought was not of them. It was, I need coffee. It was a mundane, normal, human thought. It was the most beautiful feeling in the world. When I padded into the kitchen, Ruth was already there, in her scrubs, pouring boiling water over a filter. She had the morning news on the small counter television, the volume low. "Morning," she grunted. "You're a local celebrity, apparently." She nodded at the TV. A local gossip segment was on. They were showing a grainy, long-lens shot of me, in my blue dress, standing on the steps of the Astoria Grand, with the caption, "Mystery Woman Shuts Down Society Wedding." I watched, detached, as the host, a woman with a plastic smile, retold a garbled version of the story. Sources say the groom walked out, an alleged family dispute over money, and a mystery binder. "Tabloid trash," I said, pouring my own coffee. "Don't be so sure," Ruth said, her eyes sharp. "Look at this." She tapped her phone, which was open on the kitchen table to a local social media feed. The official, professional-looking photos from the wedding photographer had clearly been leaked overnight. There was a stunning, high-definition shot of Lena, her face a mask of rage. Lunging, there was the shot of Derek, his face gray, staring at the open binder. And there was the shot of Evelyn, her finger pointed, her mouth open in a silent, venomous shriek. But the comments were not what I expected. The first few were the typical, "Oh, that poor bride. What a monster sister." But then, the tide turned. A guest, clearly, had leaked my one-page summary. A screenshot of it was circulating. Financial summary, Rivera Family Accounts, 2017. 2024. And under that, the comments were a different story. Wait, the sister paid for everything, the mortgage, the ring. I was there. She didn't yell. She was quiet. The bride's family were the ones screaming. This isn't a mental breakdown. This is an audit. Good for her. My God, he was marrying into a financial sinkhole. That woman saved him. The story, Evelyn's carefully crafted narrative of the unstable daughter, was losing. It was being drowned out by a single, undeniable, one-page spreadsheet. The evidence was winning. My phone, my work phone, chimed with a new email. It was from Human Resources, a follow-up to my message. Subject correction of employment status. Dear Ms. Rivera, this is to confirm that your file has been updated. A formal note has been attached to the original report, filed by Ms. Evelyn Rivera. Correcting the record as per employee's direct testimony, all flags on your employment status have been removed. We apologize for any inconvenience. A note. They had corrected the record. It was the dry, sterile, corporate equivalent of a retraction. Evelyn's first, most dangerous fire was out. The noise had been unplugged. Good news, Ruth asked, watching my face. The best, I said. My job is safe. It was always safe, Avery, she said, pulling on her coat. You were always the asset. They were always the liability. The world just finally got the memo. She left for her shift, and I was alone in the quiet apartment, the gray light of a new day filtering in. The adrenaline was gone. The anger was gone. What was left was a vast, open, and slightly terrifying quiet. I had spent my entire adult life reacting to their fires. Now, there was no fire. What was I supposed to do? I returned to my own apartment that afternoon, the high-rise on the river. I had been dreading it, dreading the silence, the emptiness. But when I walked in, it felt different. It was not empty. It was clean. I stood in the center of my living room, with its floor-to-ceiling windows, and looked out at the Chicago River. A slow, gray-green artery moving through the city. I had bought this view. I had earned this silence. There was a package tucked inside my mail slot, a thick, cream-colored, expensive stock envelope, not a bill, not a summons. It had been hand-delivered by a messenger service. I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of matching stationery, the kind my father always used for his important correspondence. The handwriting was his. A tight, controlled, almost strangled script. It was not a letter. It was 3 sentences. Avery, I saw the ledger. I had not seen it all laid out. I have been a coward. You deserve peace. Your mother. She is not well. I am sorry. I read the letter. Your mother. She is not well. Even in his apology, he was deflecting, diagnosing, finding another stage for her to perform on. I am sorry. I waited for the tears. I waited for the catharsis. The wave of grief or forgiveness for the 12-year-old girl holding the paper plates. It never came. I did not cry. I just breathed out, a long, slow, quiet exhale. I folded the letter. I put it on the counter. The good child, the little girl who had been waiting 33 years for that apology, the one who had been willing to pay $500,000 for it. She just walked out. She was free. She didn't need it anymore. The peace lasted for a full day. I ordered groceries. I watered my plants. I sat and watched the river. I was relearning how to exist without a crisis. Then, my work phone rang. Elise Hartman. Avery, she said, her voice crisp. No small talk. Elise, I'm back in Chicago. I know, your correction to HR was, and I quote my legal counsel, a thing of beauty. How are you? I'm solvent. Elise, I heard her dry chuckle. Good. The market loves solvency. Listen, I'm not calling to check on you. I'm calling to poach you. Poach me, I already work for you. You work for the main fund, which is fine, but I'm spinning out. Avery, I'm launching my own division, the Ethical Investment Group. We're focusing on companies with female leadership, transparent governance, and ironclad boundaries. Companies that don't subsidize toxic assets." She paused. "The subtext is not subtle, I know." "It's not," I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. "I need a senior analyst, a lead, someone who is, shall we say, demonstrably skilled at identifying and cutting off bad investments. The interview is a formality. The job is yours, if you want it." I looked out at the river, a new division, ethical investment, boundaries. "I'm interested," I said. "Very good. My assistant will send the details. Welcome to the next level. Avery." That weekend, I moved. Not out of the city, just out of the apartment. It was a good apartment, but it was the one I had cowered in. It was the one where I had taken the call. It was the one that held the ghosts of my old life. My lease was up. I found a new place, 3 floors higher, in a building further down the river. It was smaller, but the windows were bigger. It was almost all glass, a box of light hanging over the city. I moved in with my 3 suitcases, my laptop, and my plants. The first thing I did was take my favorite, a massive, unruly pothos vine, and hang it in the main window, where it would get the most brilliant, direct morning sun. I was sitting on the floor, unpacking a box of books, when Aunt Ruth came by, holding a bottle of decent bourbon. "I heard you were moving up," she said, gesturing at the view. "Just changing the scenery." She poured 2 glasses. She handed one to me. She did not toast. She just looked around at the empty, minimalist space, the white walls, the polished concrete floor, the light. "This is good," she said, "but be careful, Avery." "Careful of what?" "Freedom. Don't let it become a vacuum. You've spent your whole life being against something, being in reaction to them. You're going to have a powerful urge to fill this new silence with anything, another job, another project, another person to fix." She took a sip of her bourbon. "Don't," she said. "Don't just fill the space. You choose what goes in it. You choose on purpose." Her words stayed with me. Fill it with what you choose. That night, I took out the new, brown leather journal, the one from the stationery shop. I opened to the first blank page. I wrote down the things I was choosing. Morning swim. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. The pool in this building. Pottery. Thursday nights. The studio in Lincoln Square. Make something useless and ugly. Stop saying "I'm sorry" to waiters. Stop apologizing for taking up space in an elevator. Stop apologizing for existing. The week settled. A new routine began. I started at Elise's new division. The work was sharp, meaningful. I was good at it. I was building something. Not just reacting. I went to pottery. My first bowl was a lopsided, heavy, truly ugly thing. I kept it on my new, clean kitchen counter. One evening, an envelope was slid under my door. No stamp, no return address, just my unit number. Handwritten. Inside, on a piece of simple notebook paper, was a message. "I lived down the hall from your parents for 10 years. My brother. He was my Lena. He lived with me. He drained me. I read your story. The one online. I packed his bags last week. I helped him find a job application. I wanted to say thank you. There was no name. I reread the last line. Thank you. I had been the monster. And now, I was an inspiration. No, that was too grand. I was just a case study, a woman who had finally shown her work. The rumors trickled back, as they always do. Aunt Ruth was the source, the unwilling town crier. "Heard from your father," she said over the phone one night, "and the wedding is, as they say, postponed indefinitely. Derek is gone. Anna Clark pulled his funding, told him to clean up his personal balance sheet before she invested another dime in him. And them?" I asked, my voice quieter. "Evelyn is quiet, frighteningly quiet. The theater is dark." A pause. And Lena? Lena moved out, got a studio apartment in Wicker Park. She's working at a photography studio, not as a photographer, as a receptionist, answering the phone, booking appointments. I processed that. Lena, working. Answering a phone she had to pay for herself. My first, ugly, human instinct was a flash of triumph. Good. She deserves it. But it faded instantly. It was not a punishment. It was just balance. The universe, which I had single-handedly kept tilted in her favor for so long, had finally righted itself. She was just living a life, a real one. That night, I took an empty cardboard box from my closet. I took the second blue binder, the Rivera ledger, my copy. I took my father's 3-sentence letter. I took the anonymous note from the neighbor. I took the printout of Elise's job offer. I placed them all inside. I took my label maker. I printed a new label. I stuck it on the side of the box. Lessons learned. I paused, then printed one more, smaller label, and stuck it just below. Open only in case of identity crisis. I slid the box into the back of my closet. I did not need it. The lessons were not on the paper anymore. They were in my bones. I was not the girl holding the plates. I was not the analyst paying the bills. I was just Avery. And for the first time, that was enough. About 3 weeks after the day at the Astoria Grand, the official, final notification arrived, not to me, but to the 200 guests who had witnessed the implosion. Aunt Ruth, my only remaining source of family news, mentioned it over the phone. "Well, the cancellation cards are out," she said, her voice dry. "Cancellation?" I asked, looking out my new office window at the river. "Not postponed, canceled." She paused. "Just a single, heavy card, cream-colored, black script. The wedding of Lena Rivera and Derek Lang will not be taking place. That's it. No explanation, no spin, no performance." I let that sink in. Evelyn, my mother, had chosen silence. The rumors, which had been a raging fire for a full week, had nowhere to go. With no fuel from the source, no dramatic tales of woe or victimization, the entire story simply died. It dried up, like a wet mark on pavement, leaving nothing behind but a faint stain. The greatest, most profound act of social self-preservation my mother had ever committed was, in the end, her silence. My own new beginning was, by contrast, loud and official. The formal offer from Elise landed on my new desk, couriered in a heavy binder of its own. The title was Senior Lead, Ethical Governance and Boundary Investments. It was a title so specific, so tailored. It was almost a private joke. Elise had, of course, paper-clipped a handwritten note to the top of the contract. It was not, "Welcome aboard." It was not, "Congratulations." It was 5 words, in her sharp, angular script: "Turn your boundaries into yield." I was sitting in my new apartment, the one that was mostly glass, high above the city, when my personal phone rang. A number I did not recognize. My new instinct, my trained, healthy, default setting, was to let it go to voicemail. But something made me answer. "Avery Rivera," I said. There was a long pause, filled with static. "Avery, it's Derek Lang." His voice was a ghost. The booming, confident startup guy was gone. This voice was thin, reedy, exhausted. "Derek," I said. My voice was neutral, a statement of fact. "Look, I know I have no right to call you, none, but I have to." He took a long, shuddering breath. I could hear it, the sound of a man at the bottom of a spreadsheet. "I read the binder, Avery. I read it. I read it about 5 times. I took it to my own accountant. I ran the numbers on the HELOC, the credit card statements, the ring." I said nothing. This was not my audit. I was not here to help him. "I was an idiot," he whispered. The admission was so quiet, I almost missed it. A colossal, blind, stupid idiot. I believed the performance. I wanted to believe it. It was a very expensive performance, I said, my voice not unkind, but not warm, just factual. Yes, yes, it was, he laughed. A short, dry, broken sound. I don't know. I wanted to say thank you. For the truth. I'm sorry thank you. He was looking for absolution. The old Avery, the fixer, the rock, would have rushed in. She would have said, "It's okay. Derek, you were a victim, too. It wasn't your fault. I was not the old Avery." I looked out at the river. "You're welcome, Derek," I said, my voice calm and clear. "Pay your own bills." I hung up. I did not owe him forgiveness. I had already given him the data. The final string was cut by Aunt Ruth. A week later, she came by my new apartment, not with bourbon, but with a small wooden box. "I was cleaning out my desk," she said, her voice rough. "This was in the back. It was my mother's. Your grandmother's. She gave it to me right after your father married Evelyn." She handed me a single, tiny, brittle piece of paper, folded into a perfect square. It was yellowed, fragile as a dead leaf. I unfolded it. The handwriting was a looping, faded, fountain pen cursive. It was a single sentence. "Blood only matters when it doesn't drain you." I stared at the words, a transmission from a ghost, a diagnosis from 40 years in the past. My grandmother, a woman I barely remembered, had seen it. She had seen the deficit spending in Evelyn's soul. "She knew," I whispered, my fingers tracing the faded ink. "She always knew," Ruth said, putting her hand on my shoulder. It just took the rest of us a long time to learn how to read a balance sheet. That evening, I felt a pull, a need for a ritual, a closing ceremony. The sun was setting, turning the Chicago River into a ribbon of cold, liquid steel. The first real ice of the winter was forming at the edges. I put on my coat and walked down to the promenade. Just below my building, the wind was brutal. It was the pure, unfiltered Lake Michigan wind, the kind that cuts through wool and promises a long winter. I found a spot on a concrete bench, sheltered by the bridge. I took a single, white, tea-light candle from my pocket, the same kind that had been in the bungalow. I cupped my hands, protecting it from the wind. It took 3 matches, my fingers going numb, before the wick finally caught, a tiny, stubborn, desperate flame. I sat there, in the gathering, purple dark, watching the candle. This was my Bora Bora. Not a place, but a state of mind, a small, private, protected fire. I took out my personal phone, the one that was now, blessedly, almost always silent. I navigated to my files. I found a folder I had made years ago, a folder that was my digital ball and chain. It was labeled, "Explain Myself to Others." It was full of screenshots of polite excuses, drafts of emails justifying my time, notes on how to gently decline a demand, 1,000 ways to say no that all sounded like, maybe. It was a dossier of my own apology for existing. My thumb hovered over the icon. Who was the audience? Who was I explaining myself to? There was no one. The theater was empty. I was the only one left. I pressed the button. "Are you sure you want to permanently delete, explain myself to others?" I hit delete, a small, digital puff of smoke. It was gone. My phone vibrated. A new message. I almost flinched. But it was just my father. Charles. The listing for the house went public today. The bank was not kind. I am learning how to pay my own part. I hope you are well. I am learning. The first active verb he had ever used. The old Avery would have seen this as a cry for help, a cue to step in, to manage the sale, to protect his assets. The new Avery saw it as a statement, an update. I typed a reply. It was fast. It was clean. "I wish you peace. Dad." I did not say, "I love you." I did not say, "I'm here for you." I did not open the door. I just wished him peace. I closed the account. A second buzz. My work phone. A message from Elise. Elise solid projections on the new fund. I like them. For next quarter, I want a proposal for a new fund. I'm thinking the Female Founder Boundary Fund. For women who know their value and aren't afraid to sue for it, draft it. I smiled. A real, cold air smile. The money would flow to the boundaries. I looked back at my candle. A sudden, violent gust of wind came howling off the river. It hit the flame. The flame bent, flattened, turned blue, and went so low it was just a tiny, desperate spark at the base of the wick. It was gone. I held my breath, waiting for the smoke. The wind passed, and the flame, impossibly, painfully, snapped back up. It was small. It was flickering, but it was not out. I took out my leather journal. I wrote the last line of this story. They wanted me to be small, to fit into their frame. I have chosen, instead, to be my own size. I closed the book. I looked at the skyline, a hard, glittering, beautiful line of defense. I took a deep, clean, cold breath. It did not require permission. I was about to blow out the candle, to go home. My phone vibrated one last time. It was on the concrete bench, next to the flame. I looked down at the screen. A new text message, from an unknown number, but the preview was enough. Lena Avery, it's me. I'm sorry. There it was. The magic words. The words I was supposed to beg for. The price of admission. The key to the kingdom. I'm sorry. The apology. Arriving years late, and a lifetime short. The old Avery would have wept. She would have called. She would have said, "Oh, Lena, it's okay. Of course. I forgive you. Let's fix this." I looked at the glowing, unread message. I looked at the small, steady flame of the candle beside it. I did not pick up the phone. I let the message sit there, in the cold. A digital demand for my attention. I spoke, just to myself. A whisper that the Chicago wind took instantly. "Forgiveness is a boundary," I said. "It is not a ticket for re-entry." I did not reply. I let the sound of the river, the dark water moving, the ice cracking at the edges, fill the space. This silence, right here, in the cold, with the city at my back. This silence was mine. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We would love to know your thoughts. Where in the world are you listening from? Comment below so we can connect and share. Please remember to subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories and like this video. It helps us a lot. And if you want more stories like this to be heard, please support us by hitting that hype button.